KURTZPEL, the myth, the legend, the MMORPG genre's hope for an anime MMO with incredible combat that ultimately ended up suffocating under the pressure and disappointing millions of players all around the world. Admittedly, not because it was a bad game. Okay, in retrospect, yeah, partly because it was a bad game at the time of its release specifically, but also because there were a large percentage of us that thought that it was going to be a large-scale open-world MMORPG, and it wasn't. It featured a lot of multiplayer activities. You could engage another player in 1v1 combat, you could engage multiple other players in 2v2 combat, and truly showcasing its unrivaled diversity in terms of game modes, you can engage other players in 4v4 combat. Now, that isn't to say that it didn't feature an extensive number of PvE game modes though. You could totally hit a monster until it falls over in defeat. But that was admittedly when I played the game years ago. How is it doing in 2023? Are players still enjoying themselves? Are there regular updates? Today, we're gonna find out. I played KURTZPEL in 2023, and this was my experience. Before we take a look at KURTZPEL, I want to thank every one of our patrons over on Patreon. You guys allow for me to keep pushing out video after video like this, and I deeply appreciate all of your guys' support. Also, if you have a moment, consider following me on Twitch. I stream there every weekend. Now, it has been, admittedly, a little while since I last played KURTZPEL. 2 years, I think, at this juncture. But I logged into the game expecting to just be able to continue immediately from where I last left it, and was very confused. Not only was my resolution completely off, but the game was also entirely in Korean. The UI, all of the options. I had no idea what all of those options, all of the text over on the right was or meant. I had no idea where the language options were. After a couple of minutes, I managed to find an option in Korean that said English. Thank God. Is this something that new players also have to deal with? Because this was a fresh installation from a North American account. If players are greeted with a game that they cannot understand in a language that they are unable to read, they would immediately be turned away. There's no contesting that, which is a very silly introduction to the game. After retranslating the game into English, I went back to the login screen, I deleted an old character, and I proceeded to create a brand new one. We want to see how KURTZPEL is doing in 2023 after all. After creating absolute perfection in terms of body, with more sliders than any other anime game available online, I fumbled and made my character look horrendously derpy, which is honestly not overly concerning given her face is mostly obscured by her hair and the distance the camera is from her. Upon completion of your creation, you're presented with a brand new tab featuring trackable quests and objectives. Honestly, a very mobile-esque feature. You have daily missions, weekly missions, the actual quests that you can progress through, epic quests, and event activities. Daily and weekly objectives consist of options like win a battle mission, defeat an enemy, basic options that promote activity in the community. This is very important as the game, from what I could tell, was dead, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. You're forced into some tutorial content explaining how to use karmas, which are your unique weapons and the combos that are associated with them. There are a large variety in karmas, with each weapon possessing both strengths and weaknesses over others. Some of them are fantastic for CC, crowd control. Others excel quite significantly at AoEing large groups of enemies, both AI controlled and player alike. Unfortunately, the rate of karma acquisition is incredibly slow from what I've noticed. And when I last played, there were also a number of them gated behind real money purchases. I couldn't find out whether that was still the case or if all of the karmas were now earnable and acquirable completely free in-game. You begin with the great sword and the bow, but I unlocked the gauntlets and the stave after playing for an hour or two, both of which were vastly superior to my beginner karmas. Before even beginning the tutorial though, Ensure, arguably the most important character in the game, since she is our connection to content, told me that I'd grown so much since the first time she saw me. You know, approximately 2 minutes ago. What can I say? I'm a grower, not a shower. The tutorial treats you like you're an idiot, walking you through every interaction between abilities, combos, and weapon swapping possible, which is great because, admittedly, I'm an idiot and I had forgotten. It has genuinely been that long. After the tutorial and before fully gaining access to the game, you're required to go through a number of AI-controlled PvP battles, just to make sure you understand what the tutorial taught you and to reiterate that this game is not for idiots. Well, except for the people that named the AI cheapo, too big to fail. Who let these people name these characters? That is worse, genuinely, objectively worse than me calling myself MRSSTIX in all the different games that I play. Honestly though, the maps that you're taken into to actually engage other players, or in this case the AI, are still as gorgeous as ever. I can imagine how fun they'd actually be to explore if we were given access to openly traverse them. Then we're forced into 2v2 matches, once again with both AI allies and enemies. At times, I'd cease what I was doing just so I could enjoy watching the AI fumble and periodically stand there struggling to load their next sequence of commands, which really showcased in real time the horrendous limitations that having AI party members and AI enemies imposes on us in the game overall. The lack of awareness, the lack of objective routing, the AI exists merely as a punching bag, or with regards to the PvE mode, as a means with which to bombard you with abilities that span the entire arena that auto-lock onto you, or are impossible to mitigate the damage from. And don't even get me started on whatever this is. Like, I am all for innovative gameplay. I am fully in support of our peers. But no, you cannot tell me that this is anything other than embarrassingly cringe. That consisted of primarily the first hour or two of the game. And if you somehow found the willpower to progress further into the game, which, judging from the concurrent player numbers, that isn't the case for the vast majority of people that try the game out, you're met with an objectively worse experience to come. After finishing all of the forced tutorial content and gaining full control over my character, I obtained access to a variety of game modes and new features. I could dress up my Barbie doll. I could change her weapon between the available karmas that I had access to. Beginning the game, I had the great sword, the bow and arrow, as I noted earlier, but I unlocked the stave and the gauntlet, which I immediately swapped to because they are substantially more powerful and deal exponentially more damage in PvE. I can't tell in PvP because of all of the game modes that I had queued for, none ever successfully popped. I tried this over a period of days, attempting to queue at various different times. Maybe I was just unlucky. I even went as far as asking in chat if there was anyone that was interested in PvP, to no avail. After spending an extended period of time queuing, a pop-up message appeared telling me, "Your current bracket is dead. Would you like to verse players that have months or years worth of experience in the game so there's something to actually do? If you hit yes, you may rage quit the game within seconds of participating." Evidently, it didn't end up making a difference, and so I moved on, and I decided it might be in my best interest to instead queue for the PvE game modes. PvE consisted of a couple of consecutive waves of monsters followed by a singular boss monster. Enemies were more or less the same per map, with the difference being the bosses themselves. Each boss had their own unique abilities, their own strengths and weaknesses. Like the big rock guy, he was weak against things that hit him. The peacock guy, he was weak against things that hit him too. The horny rock guy, he was weak against things that hit him. As you've no doubt learned, there is a lot of complexity to each encounter. You need to hit your roll key to dodge abilities, and cycle through the few skills that you have in hopes that you have enough HP to survive long enough for the boss to die. Thankfully, there are actual rewards for doing PvE content. You get gear, more powerful weapons, more powerful armor, skimpier outfits, all of which, of course, make you exponentially more powerful. Weapons had a direct impact on the damage that I did. This was very noticeable by the rate at which enemies died. However, even though I'd equip armor that gave me upwards of 5,000 more HP per piece or thousands of defense, I died just as rapidly. I felt like I was wearing nothing at all, and the weather isn't nearly hot enough for that, nor did I ever acquire a tiny enough outfit where that would ever be relevant. The combat itself was a very rewarding experience though. I think KURTZPEL has always prided itself on its exceptional combat, and seeing the effects that leak out of the long, hard rod of mine that I use to beat on enemies is a very satisfying experience. As a mage main in a lot of the different MMOs that I play, the stave gameplay was right up my alley. I have a lot of experience with long hard wood in my hand, so I felt right at home with this class and Karma. By the end of my several day ordeal, I felt exhausted. I'd log in, I'd try queuing for some PvP, repeatedly end up disappointed. That's what I imagine a lot of my early girlfriends felt. Queue for a few of the same fights that I'd already done and attempt to obtain new gear, then run a couple fights I had in an effort to push through all of the available content. I'd run around the single hub where all of the players gathered to AFK while waiting for their PvP queues to time out before logging off and going to play Genshin Impact, and then I'd log myself out because there was just nothing to do. The minuscule number of players have killed any real competitive content to consume, and running a couple of the same boss fights repetitiously is a chore, completely futile, and not at all rewarding in any capacity. KURTZPEL really had a lot of potential. KOG Games, the studio behind KURTZPEL, delivered us something fun in the way of L-Sword, but KURTZPEL? No. I recall having a lot of fun in PvP when I streamed the game, which does show the potential for fun the game has, but being required to coordinate content like that is a severe limiting factor when it comes to freely enjoying the game at your own pace. So, I gave up, I uninstalled the game, and here we are. I wish there was more to cover. I wish there were positive things to say about the game, but there just isn't. At its core, the game can be fun, but as a whole, it just isn't. Not remotely. Now, if KURTZPEL isn't your thing, no problem. I got you covered with 2 different videos on screen right now. Both videos that I think are very important to go ahead and watch, and I urge you to.